Ever stop to think that your entire mindset, your whole approach to life, might fit into one of two spiritual blueprints? Well, today we're going to break down a really powerful concept from a sermon that does just that. It talks about two ways of living, called the two houses. Let's get into it. The whole thing starts with this question right here. It's super direct, and it really frames everything we're about to discuss. It's basically asking you and me to take a good look inward and figure out which of these spiritual addresses we're currently living at. So, what exactly are these houses? Now, we're not talking about actual physical buildings with a roof and four walls. Nope. They're metaphors for two totally opposite spiritual mindsets. And to make it really clear, the sermon uses two well-known kings from the Bible, Saul and David, to basically personify these two different approaches to faith, obedience, and just life. Okay, let's start with the first one, the House of Saul. If there's one defining feature of this mindset, it's this: a tendency to kind of pick and choose. It's a life built on what the sermon calls partial obedience. You follow the parts you like, and maybe not so much the other parts. And you can see how all these traits are connected, right? According to the source, this way of thinking is really obsessed with what other people think. It's all about getting praise from others, not necessarily approval from God. And that leads to questioning instructions, arguing with leaders, and at the end of the day, just relying on your own smarts instead of on faith. It all kind of snowballs. This quote right here, it really gets to the core of it. The big idea is that partial obedience isn't really obedience at all. It's you saying, okay, I'll do this part, but I'm going to ignore that part. By doing that, you've just made yourself the ultimate judge, the final authority. And that, the sermon says, is a form of rebellion. This mindset also shows up in how someone views generosity. The sermon points out that a person living in the house of Saul might look at money being spent on, say, new banners for a church and think, what a waste. And they really don't like public pledges for giving, because then everyone can see who's giving and who isn't. All right, now for the total opposite. Let's talk about the house of David. This isn't about hesitation or calculation. This is a life that's defined by a passionate, all-in, wholehearted pursuit of a connection with God. I mean, the contrast is just so clear. Where Saul was worried about his public image, David is all about seeking God's approval first and foremost. And that changes everything. It leads to complete obedience, joyful and uninhibited worship, and a spirit of true, open-handed generosity. It's why he gets that famous title, a man after God's own heart. This quote just perfectly captures the vibe of this house. It's not that feeling of, oh, do I have to go? Or how long is this going to take? No way. It's this genuine excitement, this pure joy about getting to go and be a part of a spiritual community. It's a want to, not a have to. You know, the source gives this amazing little story to drive this point home. The pastor remembers the first time he saw someone give a really large offering, and his reaction wasn't cynical or critical. That's the Saul reaction. Instead, he was moved to tears, thinking, wow, I want to be able to do that one day. That's the David mindset. It gets inspired, not intimidated. Okay, so we've got two completely different mindsets leading to two completely different sets of actions. So what's the bottom line? Well, according to the sermon, this all leads to two wildly different outcomes in life. Let's break down what they are. This chart just lays it all out so clearly. You've got the critical, self-reliant mindset of Saul, which leads to doing things halfway and hiding your giving. The result, a circular life. Then you have the joyful, God-reliant mindset of David, which leads to full obedience and open generosity. And the outcome there is riding on the high places. So what on earth is a circular life? Well, it's described as this really frustrating cycle. You work hard, you get something, and then poof, you lose it. You're always busy, always moving, but you never seem to make any real, lasting forward progress. It's like you're running on a treadmill. You're putting in all the effort, but you're not actually going anywhere. But the outcome for the house of David? It's the complete opposite. It's a divine promise of being lifted up, of being provided for, riding upon the high places. That's a picture of influence, success, and prosperity. It's about being elevated to a place you could never get to with just your own strength or talents. Now, after hearing all of that, you might be thinking, oh no, I think I'm stuck in the wrong house. But here's the best part. The core message here is all about hope. It's arguing that you are absolutely not stuck. And this, right here, is the key takeaway. The sermon really hammers this home. Anyone,
And that means anyone can make a conscious choice to move. You can pack your bags and leave the house of Saul and move into the house of David. It even brings up Abner from the Bible, who was Saul's top guy, but he switched his loyalty to David. See? Your current address is not your final destination. It's not a life sentence.
So we're left with this really powerful idea. This framework draws a direct line between a mindset of faith-filled generosity and real, tangible success. And it leaves us with a pretty compelling question to chew on. What does this perspective really suggest about the deep connection between what we believe in our hearts, how we act with our resources, and the kind of life we end up building?